Good afternoon. This is Eric Mucklow from the headquarters of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I'm the Building Technology Standards and Criteria Program Manager. Today's webinar will be on the new High-Performance Sustainable Buildings Guiding Principles Checklist, especially focused on our beta testing phase. Specifically, today's agenda, we will focus on the significant changes to the facility performance requirements. We'll provide an overview of the new High-Performance Sustainable Building Guiding Principles Checklist, the objectives of the beta testing phase, and the expectations of the beta testers. So to start, let's take a look at the significant changes in the history of the facility performance requirements. Mid-2000s, there was a large push for energy efficiency and sustainability in buildings. We had the EPAC 2005 requirements, which is what kicked off the requirements for the 30% better than ASHRAE 90.1. A lot of you are familiar with that. And then 21 agencies got together, and all of their principals signed a memorandum of understanding that said, hey, you know what, we are all going to agree to these guiding principles, they called them. And the guiding principles were not very detailed in some areas and more detailed in other areas. They weren't really requirements driven, but they rounded up the concepts of integrated design, energy efficiency, water efficiency, and things like that. And those stood for quite a long time. They signed the MOU in 2006. Then in 2007, President Bush signed Executive Order 13423, and he basically said, hey, you know, those guiding principles, I'm going to make those mandatory for all federal agencies. And then he had the Department of Energy issue a rulemaking on how to interpret the guiding principles and put it more of a requirements-based package. Also in that time period, the ECB 2007 was passed. It had additional requirements as well as guidance for amping up the energy efficiency over the next decade, which we pursued. In that executive order, it had a lot of things. It applied to all new agency construction and renovations, but it had a goal for 15% of the federal building inventory, that's all buildings, existing and new, by 2015, 15% by 2015. So the result, FA failure. There's no one reason to blame for that. It's a lot of it was unfunded mandates, and a lot of it was other things that we can get into for hours, but we will skip all that. There's a lot of debate there. So President Obama signed Executive Order 13693, which rescinded the prior Executive Order 13423 and some others, and basically said, let's try again. And he set forth a new goal of 15% by 2025. Since we were only at 2% or less federal government-wide when 2015 hit. But he mandated that the Council of Environmental Quality, which is a White House organization, mandated that they set out and revise the guiding principles. So they did that. They released their new guiding principles in March 2016. They are much more concrete. They're still not so responsive on the federal construction process, being that we have diverse roles and timelines. There are things about smoking policies and operations and maintenance, ongoing benchmarking and management of facilities. So it's really written for like a high-level agency view, which makes it harder to break down who exactly is responsible for what in the process. We at the Corps of Engineers, we are the service agency that designs and builds a lot of facilities, and we have to say that our buildings are compliant, but yet we don't control their smoking policies, their maintenance activities, ongoing benchmarking, metering, and all that stuff once we sign the building over. So that's kind of a continued challenge, but not insurmountable. One of the most significant changes is that previously the guiding principles were interpreted as an all or nothing. You either did it or you didn't get credit. And if you didn't do any one thing, then your building was not compliant. Now they've clarified that it's still mostly all or nothing. They've consolidated down to a checklist of 21 items, 19 of which are mandatory, and the other remainder are basically as applicable, whether it's a major renovation or existing building assessment or a new construction. However, now not applicable counts as compliant. If we can document that something is not life cycle cost effective, or for whatever reason, if it's not applicable, it's not a doom and gloom, it now counts. So they also released checklists for compliance. Once they released the checklist of compliance, Kelly Polson in our office got with her Sustainability Discipline Working Group counterparts at the Navy and Air Force, and they spearheaded an effort to overhaul the summation of all of our energy and sustainability requirements in the Uniform Facility Criteria 1-200-02. They coalesced the new requirements into the criteria language, and they basically structured it the same way as the checklist. So if you are familiar with the old 1-200-02, if you look at the new one, you'll see that it's pretty different. It's been completely overhauled, and you'll see that the paragraph, when it gets to the requirements in sections 2 and sections 3, the paragraphs pretty much follow the same outline as the official checklist. That makes it easier for auditing activities to connect the dots between our facility compliance and the mandated checklist for requirements. So, once the UFC 1-200-02 was put out, we simultaneously were developing this new high-performance sustainable building checklist accordingly. So let's get into the overview of the high-performance sustainable building guiding principles checklist. First, it's going to be a web-enabled application. There's two different ways of doing this. There is a online, through your browser, login capability into the SMS system, the Sustainment Management Systems portal, which is where builder, roofer, railer, all those tools that have been developed by Cyril and that are run on their servers where those all reside. Somebody who has access to that system can go in, find a building, and they can fill out one of these assessments, so one of these checklists. We have yet to get the server figured out to how we can create login IDs that allow access to only one building, or to be able to give access to somebody that's not inside the core. It's not really structured to give partial access to limited resources. So we're going to be addressing that in the back room, so to speak, as we go forward. However, there is a Builder Red remote entry database tool that Cyril developed. It's a standalone tool. You can download it off the internet and install it on your computers. Whether you're USACE or an AE firm that's helping out or on contract or what have you, can install this form, and we have a template that is loaded by the form, and then once you are in the template, you create your high-performance sustainable building checklist. So there's a section in the checklist. Each section, numbered section, corresponds to the compliance topics in order of the checklist, which is also in order of the UFC. You can expand sections. They're all rolled up. You can expand sections by hitting the plus icon, and that'll expand that section out. This top section is, before we get into the checklist items, it just has some general information about the project for tracking purposes. It also has some buttons to upload a scan of the DD 1391, as well as a text box to pop out, and you can put current point of contact information or what have you in there, just for convenience. This is the information that is on the checklist itself. These checklists will be associated with a building entry. So the overall information on the building is going to be in that building entry. This is a subset of that, and it's attached. So you don't have to worry about all that kind of information that pertains to the building that's not a part of the assessment, because that's going to be tracked separately. So overall, this is a list of the different sections. There's the compliance information, which we just looked at. There's a few paragraphs on instructions, not very detailed. We'll get into more detailed instructions as the beta testing phase progresses. And then we have the 18 sections that correspond to the 18 checklist items. I mentioned there were 21 checklist items. There are 2 checklists that were actually put out, one for new construction and one for existing building certification, and basically they're mostly the same up through question 18. So 18, 19, 20, 21, we kind of rolled up into a couple questions on the checklist, and we're using the same checklist for both new construction and existing buildings on our side. Each section uses a cascading outline structure from that flyout that we just looked at. There's the checklist item, the UFC 1-200-02 subparagraph reference, then a compliance indication, and a documentation of compliance. As I mentioned, each checklist item The overall top level there corresponds to the item in the CEQ Guiding Principles Compliance Checklist. The UFC references are the same, whether they are referring to the new construction or existing building assessments. The only difference is the first number. The UFC is structured such that everything in Section 2 is new construction, everything in Section 3 is for building assessments, but the subparagraphs are numbered the same. For example, indoor air quality for new buildings is 2-5.3. Indoor air quality for existing building assessments is 3-5.3. So basically in that, for an example, one of these items, let's look at number 7, indoor water use. We have that plus sign to check, and that expands out the subparts below that. There are 2 topics under indoor water use, subtopics. One is the indoor water itself, the plumbing fixtures and things like that, making sure that they're water sense or low flow and all that kind of thing. You'll see that there is not a whole lot of information regarding what the UFC actually says. That's intentional. As you're going through this, we expect that you'll have a copy of the UFC until you learn what these things all mean, and you'll be walking through the UFC as you go through the checklist. We did not want to try to get into repeating the entire content of the UFC in this checklist for obvious reasons. So basically, you see here after that UFC line reference, there's a line of radio buttons. Those are the circles. If you're familiar with the internet, you probably know that when you hit on one of those circles, it's an either-or option. If you click on one circle and you click on another circle, the circle that you clicked before disappears, so you can only have one of those checked. So basically for indoor water, if you have your low flow fixture specified and all that, you click on yes for compliant. If you are not in compliant, or if you click no, not assessed or not applicable, then there's asterisks after there, which means you have to enter a justification. Yes. To add a justification, you click on that plus sign that's to the left of the UFC block, and that opens up a little subsection in here, which gives you check boxes. Now these are boxes, which means you can check more than one as applicable, and you can put in an indication, a general indication of why you're not compliant, or why it wasn't assessed, or why it's not applicable. As I mentioned before, not applicable in this case counts as being compliant. So if you are looking at indoor water fixtures, if there's some reason that they're not cost effective or something, then you can click on that after you click on the not applicable button there. There's also a little clipboard text box here. You can click that, and that'll bring out a text box, and you can add any information that pertains to why the approval process allowed for the justification to be non-compliant or not applicable. Below that is the documentation of compliance. What this means is you're verifying, as say your project manager or whatever your role is, if you're the person that has the project file, the keeper of the record of the project, you're verifying that these things are existing in the project documentation that can be used to demonstrate compliance with this item. So, for example, in this one, we would expect that the indoor water criteria, low flow fixtures, and all that would show up in the specifications, that the low flow fixture would be specified, and the submittals. When the contractor submits the submittals, that those documentation would be in there that they do comply with water sense criteria or otherwise low flow criteria. Obviously, some of these things will be only available at different phases in the project. Design analysis, basis of design is what would document the overall water intensity of the building, your annual loads, so to speak. And some things have another blank, which is for data points that are specifically tracked. Here we have water use intensity, basically the annual use of water, potable water in gallons per square foot of the building. There's a blank for entering that. Generally, these checkboxes, if they are written in all caps, that means that they are by and large required. In other words, we expect those boxes to be checked because those things should be in the file. Things that are optional or may not be applicable as much, those are not in tabs. I talked about the flyouts for the text box. You can add any additional documentation notes there. The water use intensity, similarly, is another paragraph. It's a subparagraph of the indoor water. When you're done clicking off all these things, be sure to click the Save button up there at the top. If you don't click that Save button and you exit, it will not ask you if you want to save. That's a thing that we take for granted with Word and all that. It doesn't happen on here. If you exit, you just lost what you did. So make sure you always click Save. So let's look at the beta testing phase, what our objectives are, what we hope to achieve with the beta testing. First, why are we doing it? First off, we're going to be looking for bugs in the module and in the checklist that are inherent in everything that is IT related. When we put this out there across the Corps of Engineers in different districts, different computer systems, some things aren't always configured the same way as other things, and we may find some things don't work so well. We also want to identify our information needs. Since we will be having real people doing real projects, we can focus the instructions and training materials on the questions and things that they report that they need to know. Basically, we're kind of throwing this out there. We've all experienced things where something wasn't clear, and we go to the manual or the help file, and the help file thing says, things like, is the computer turned on? So we're going to skip all of the general stuff that most people probably know that is typical in a lot of instructions and training, and just focus on what people's actual questions are and what their needs are. So then we can be concise and get straight to the point. By doing this, we will hopefully have a lot smoother transition in people when we launch DoD-wide. Army is spearheading, is the tip of the spear on this effort, but DoD has mandated that the Air Force and Navy also adopt the SMS system, and so they would likewise be looking at using this module for compliance as well. Also brainstorming. At the conclusion of the beta testing, we'll be asking for people's comments about enhancement ideas or any needed improvements in the wording or structure of the checklist or any of the other materials, so that we can see how we can possibly do things better. At one point, we might look at automating certain functionality. We have to explore that further with the programmers to see how much SMS system can manage, but we can see if we can have some of these kind of things a little more interactive than just checking boxes. So let's look at the expectations of the beta testers. If you're looking at stepping up to be a beta tester, or volunteered, voluntold, what have you, what we need from you. First off, for the beta testing phase, since we don't have the online access worked out yet, we will be using the Builder Red or Bread, whatever you want to call it, the Bread 3.3.10 or later software. It's a little utility tool. You saw screen captures of it throughout this presentation. It is a free download. There's a website link in the chat box or also at the end of this presentation that you can download it, and most of you will have to put in an ACE-IT ticket to install it because you probably don't have rights to install things on your laptops and stuff or computers except through them. But it is on their pre-approved list, so they should have no problem doing that. I have put in a ticket to set up a team collaboration site on the SharePoint team collaboration page. That page has not been structured. It has not been set up yet. You can get to the overall team collaboration page by the URL on the screen. Basically, should have access to that if you're in the Corps of Engineers. I'm looking into, I put in a request so that it have external access because I'm hoping to get our points of contact in the Sustainability Discipline Working Group with the Navy and Air Force also to have access. to walk them through our process as they go to see if they have any concerns and can share any lessons learned on their side. Also, we want a problem-solving attitude. Basically, this is a joint effort. As it says at the bottom, we are building the plane as we fly it, so to speak. So we want people to really help us out. Let us know if there's things that could be done better. Suggestions of what to do are a lot more appreciated than simply saying what's not right. We are looking for solutions. And we think we have a good start on things. We try to be consistent with the EPA's portfolio manager, which the federal government, the non-military federal government uses. And so we started out with that structure, but sometimes there are things that just need some further explanation, elaboration, and what have you. Here are a bunch of links. There should be a button somewhere on the screen to be able to download this presentation. Otherwise, I'll also cut and pasted these links in the chat box. These are basically the links to get you started. There's the BRED download page that I mentioned, that if your local SIT people don't have the software on their server already, they can download it here. Just make sure that they do install 3.3.10 or later. There is a problem with 3.3.7 that does not work, does not display right with our checklist, so it must be 10 or later. I think they're actually on 3.3.10.4 or something like that. If you haven't already, there's the service track link for the ASIT portal to ask for software installation requests. Otherwise, there's that 1-800 number that a lot of us can call and do it that way. Again, there's the SharePoint team collaboration site. I wish I had more detail on that site to go to a particular team page, but for now, if you go to that page, there is a PDT/Teams pull down on the top, and you can look for our addition. I'll send out an email to all the beta testers when we finally get that up, and you can click on that. Something will appear in that pull down. Click on that and go to the team collaboration site. Basically, that's where we will be sharing comments, bugs, files, our individual templates, and things like that to orchestrate this process. Review documents, share documents, that kind of thing. The ECB, Engineering Construction Bulletin 2017-1, came out in January. It's the bulletin that most of you have probably already seen if you're calling into this, that says, hey, all you districts out there, give us a name and project to be a beta tester / guinea pig. Appreciate all you people that have joined us today that are going to be in that role. I hope that you're excited and that this works well. If you've been having to fill out the prior energy and sustainability record card, which this system will be replacing, I hope you can appreciate the simplicity of this. This does not have all the text entry that of all the numbers that the record card had, and hopefully it'll be a lot smoother once we get it rolling. If you're interested in more verbose crosswalk between what changed between the 2008 guiding principles and the 2016 guiding principles, there is a crosswalk online that talks about those changes between what was done in 2006 and what the CEQ came out with. So we'll take a moment for questions here, but I thought I would just walk through, if I had time here, let me go back, time and bring up, I'll see if I can bring up the builder tool and show you what the content is before we get too far into questions. Let's see if I can make sure I'm sharing this right. Okay. Oops. Share an application. Override. Share. Okay, so let's see. To start, this is the building. What you should be seeing on your screen is the Builder Red tool. We'll start by opening up, they call it an inspection database. This tool was developed for many things, and so there are a number of different inspection type of lists that are available. This basically comes up and it'll ask you for your name. I'm going to see if I can get the beta tester's name added to this list or something to click on besides me. I have an example facility in here. If you have a project, what you'll be doing is you'll be clicking on this Add Building button right here. I'm hoping that you see my cursor blinking that. You'll be clicking on that Add Building so that you can create your own building. But right now we'll just look at this example facility. Over here, right now it comes up in the default mode of the inventory information. We just want to click on that down arrow right there and go to functionality. Under functionality, it'll show the past assessments that have been done. You can see I had one in there that was started. I'm just going to say create new. And there are different questionnaires already in here. We're going to go down to the HPSB new draft. It's High Performance Sustainable Buildings draft, new checklist. And there it looks pretty much like these screen captures did a moment ago. If you're using the online tool, it basically pretty much looks the same way, except that it's instead of a gray color scheme, it's a blue color scheme. Otherwise, it looks pretty identical. Here first, there's the basic information. I just put in some example data in there. The sustainability code on those 1354s. Basically, I would like to have that automated, but right now it's manual. You have to kind of click on it yourself. If you go through your checklist and you're compliant or not applicable on everything, then you can click on number 1. If you fail for some reason, you click on number 2. If it's pending, I forgot what the other 2, 3 and 4 were. Of course, we'll have to flesh those out in the instructions, but those are basically per the 1354 guidance as to whether it's a sustainability code 1, 2, 3, or 4 as described on the back of the 1354 form. There is the latest development milestones. You can set up, if you're in pre-project planning, your final design, beneficial occupancy or post-occupancy or existing building assessment. So there's different phases of the building that you can do these assessments on. And from the previous screen, you saw that I had one in there previously. So basically when somebody goes in, they can have different versions of these checklists as the building progresses from pre-project planning into becoming an existing building. Once we turn over the buildings, this file will be uploaded to the Sustainment Management System that MCOM and the DPW, the installation, will be using to maintain their buildings. For those of you who are not familiar, the SMS system has an inventory of all the major subsystems of a building and infrastructure, and it tracks the life cycle life cycle maintenance requirements, and says like, okay, you need to plan for replacing the pump in this year and replacing this filter every year and that kind of thing. And it's how the O&M process is supposed to plan their maintenance activities. And so this will be part of their facility database. As they then go do subsequent assessments in the future, these assessments are to be done every so many years, especially when they're coming up on renovations. They inform the renovation needs. They'll be all in their system. So as I mentioned before, we have a few paragraphs on instructions. I'm not going to read all that to you right now, but basically, as I mentioned, the items in all caps are required, and the round buttons are the either or options, and the square are the check all that apply. So the first section is integrated design. That's fairly consistent with the 2006 guiding principles. We talked about integrated design. 2006 didn't really talk much about what that was. To demonstrate that, we just have a requirement for the team roster and roles, just to show that the entire team was fleshed out with all of your disciplines, electrical, mechanical, whatever, that's a part of your project, that those people are on board at the beginning of the project, as well as some documentation on site selection. There's requirements that you not build in a floodplain, that kind of thing. That would be manifest in the charrette report. There's also some particular data point items that it asks for that are if you have electric vehicle chargers included, or if you have compressed natural gas infrastructure for natural gas vehicles, fleet vehicles and things. Some installations have those. Basically, so we want to know if you have those or not. Again, notice that those are not in all caps because they're not required in every facility, and so that will be only checked if you happen to have that applying to your building. Commissioning, again, the UFC paragraph 2-2 would apply to commissioning. If you were doing an existing building, you'd look at 3-2-2. And it would have the final commissioning report, would need to be a part of the project file. Energy efficiency is a little more detailed. It wants to see a life cycle cost analysis of the energy efficiency measures that were taken. We look for suites of energy efficiency measures as our general design principles. What kind of mechanical systems to use, what kind of combinations of energy efficiency measures make the most sense for that particular climate zone and that particular building use. We want to see that at the end of the project that the building model is in the report, is in the file, and a energy compliance analysis. That is something that's described in the UFC. So you'll have to look that up when you get to that point if you haven't done one of those yet. The design energy use intensity, that's a very important number. The design energy use intensity, your total BTUs, electrical, gas, everything, total BTUs used per year by square foot, that depends on the building type and the building location in the climate zone as to what the savings is supposed to be. And basically you then enter the savings in that box below from the baseline. The energy use intensity is tracked, but then the percent savings is entered in the next block, and that of course varies based on the baseline that you're using. 2007 versus 2010, 2013. As we know, these things tend to keep being updated, and as they're updated, some buildings that are initiated under one ASHRAE that might have a different percentage requirement being equivalent to the current requirements. So those will be entered there, whether you're looking at 30% better than ASHRAE 2007 or 12% better than 2010, whatever it is. The energy efficient products, there is a federal requirement to purchase everything that is covered under the SEMP or Energy Star program, product-wise, whether it's windows or water heaters or what have you, that they have the Energy Star label in the specifications, and so you'd be checking off that box to show that that's in the requirements. Renewable energy, this one's important for the charrette report, and that the charrette report have that the available renewable energy resources, whether it's solar or wind or what have you, available on site, that they were considered, analyzed with a life cycle cost analysis. Those should definitely be in the project, whether or not you have any renewable energy. If you do, then you'd want to check which type you had of these major types. If you have something a little more obscure, there's always the other, and you can enter in the text box pop up. You can say what kind of other that is. But we have mostly the major ones there. If you have none, then of course you can click the not applicable, but then you still need to have your life cycle cost analysis and your charrette report showing that you considered them and that it was not life cycle cost effective. If you do have renewable energy systems, they want to know the percentage of the annual load that you're offsetting with your renewable energy system. In some mandates, it's considered a energy savings measure. and your overall system size. If you have like a 2 megawatt system or whatever, would be shown in there. I'm going to speed along here. There is a specific call out. If you remember, the mandates used to be 30% of a hot water demand be through domestic solar hot water. That needs to be considered in the charrette and life cycle analysis. And again, with the corresponding size and percentage of the load. Those are becoming more cost effective. So, we still need to evaluate them for each project and not rely on, well, it wasn't cost effective in the last one, and that was then, this is now. Things change. Photovoltaic, as you may know, has come down significantly in price, and a lot of places where it used to not be cost effective, it now is cost effective. Metering is a big one. We do have to have the electrical meters in the specifications. They need to be the right electrical meters per the installation to be able to connect to the installation-wide system. So we have check boxes that the meter specifications are there, check boxes to show whether or not the installation has a installation-wide system and whether or not it's connected to that system. And so in general, for most places, we see all three of these checked. Some places don't have the systems up yet. Then of course those would not be. But we are looking toward a day when all of the facilities have individual meters and not just a meter on an installation basis. And those individual meters all upwardly report. Likewise, also with gas and propane meters, central plants, they can have meters as to how much BTUs you sucked out of the water or steam, and any other meter systems that may apply. There are blanks down here. If you've ever used the metering system, SDMS, we found it quite difficult to identify what meter went with what building specifically on our record cards. So we have a blank in here so that at the end of the project, once these meters are set up and they have their tags, their names in the system, that tag number can be put in there. That just helps us make sure that we're looking at the right meters when we go back into the benchmarking. Benchmarking, as it's described, is really an operational activity. We do have a blank in here that talks about the metering and the actual energy use intensity, especially if you're looking at existing building assessments. There is a blank for that. In the design phase, you just put the model. But then when they get to the to renovations in the future, they'd be looking at the past utility bills and determining the actual energy use intensity. Water use, we kind of covered this one before, number 7. Outdoor water use is very similar. Basically, we have a no potable water irrigation rule. So usually, a lot of times it's just basically no permanent irrigation period, since we don't have that many gray water systems. And so then you just skip this one. But if you do have a gray water system, either a condensate collection or rainwater or what have you, then of course you document that. The basis of design should address that question as to the water loads and what the requirement was for irrigation. Alternative water systems are basically gray water systems, rainwater harvesting, various other ways of harvesting things like condensate, as I mentioned before. Some installations may actually be pursuing what they call a purple pipe system on an installation-wide basis if they have industrial type activities that have a lot of reusable wastewater that they can provide to facilities for non-potable use. Stormwater management. This one has an upload button for a scan of the low impact development worksheet. Right now, this worksheet varies by service quite significantly. Hopefully, we'll be able to have an effort that will bring that to resolution, to unification. But basically, that's where you'd have that. Most of these, I think, most of you are probably, if you've gone through the LEED system, you're fairly familiar with these things. Ventilation criteria, thermal comfort. Daylighting, there's the daylighting requirements, and there's also the daylighting controls. It's one thing to have skylights, but we also want the systems that automatically dim the lights according to the amount of light that's coming in the windows. Indoor air quality, occupant health and wellness. It's one of these things you kind of have to read up on the UFC as to what the requirements there are, but it should be talked about during the charrette. Material content, that's all your recycled content, your biologically based products. There's a lot of mandates that talk about those kind of things, so we need to have those spelled out in the specifications. Waste diversion, there's two kinds of waste diversion that always confuse me. There's waste diversion that we're talking about during construction, and there's waste diversion in the facility during the facility's use. The waste diversion, when you're talking about facility use, they want to see that you have an area, an infrastructure set aside for recycling bins and things like that to be collected. So that needs to be in the floor plans, the spaces identified. Excuse me, got that cold going around. The materials management talks about waste diversion again, and that's another part of it. Mentioning construction. Address climate change risks. That's one of those things where it has you look at the site. Now, of course, at the core, the site is usually determined before we get there. But again, there's some things in there that we need to check off those boxes. Being 5 foot above a floodplain, looking at the changes that are likely in the hydrology of the site, which way it's trending. We're trying to avoid building in floodplains or areas that will become floodplains. Third-party certification. Notice that we do not call this LEED anymore. Army is still using LEED. We still pursue LEED Silver. Basically, some of the other services are saying, hey, you know what, we're not going to say that you have to use LEED. You can use Green Globes or some other certification system. We'll see how that all fleshes out. So if this checklist then thus is compatible with any third-party certification system. There's the LEED certification system, as well as the USGBC is talking to us about having a certification system specific to the guiding principles per the UFC. Green Globes has their Green Globes Green Building Institute guiding principle certification as well. So we might be trending toward certification of the guiding principles instead of certification of basically somebody else's criteria. But for the moment, our current policy is still USGBC LEED Silver for Army projects. It's a place to enter the registration number, to upload a checklist, either text box or the scan button. Of course, if you're doing something else, you have an other block. So that basically rounds out the contents of the builder. So I'm going to take questions now. Most of you should see the chat box on your screen. I see that some people have already been entering things in there. So I will be, excuse me, I'll be going through these questions in our last 15 minutes here. First one, Eric, will we be uploading the HPSB bread files to a database eventually? Basically, yes. We will either be sending them to Cyril or contacting Cyril to attach to the SMS buildings that are in the system, or the local installation DPWs. We need to work that out as far as when the real estate database gets set up and when the building gets entered into the SMS system. We were kind of at a loss as to when you're building a new building, when it gets populated in the facilities database. So that's a little dicey, and we might end up having a number of solutions. So basically, we will produce and maintain the bread file during a project. We will turn it over to NCOM when we're done. Each installation should have somebody that is using the SMS program at some point. Not all of them are, but that is the way that DoD has mandated for us to go. Whether we basically probably won't be uploading it ourselves, since most of us won't have SMS access. We'll be turning it over to somebody, and they'll be plugging and chugging it. But it'll be one of our deliverables. Unless we can get that whole login thing worked out where we can go in and attach something to a building directly ourselves. Let's see, what if the project doesn't have a 1391? Can we leave the inputs blank? Yes. Yes, you can. Only the checklist, the numbered checklist items are the only things that pertain to the real checklist as to whether a building is compliant. Those other information tidbits are basically for warmth and happiness and communication, so that we all know what building we're talking about. Eric, once we get bread installed, how do testers get a login access? Basically, once you get if you use the bread file, the bread thing installed, I'm going to see about getting the names added of the beta testers so that they can be selected. Otherwise, it's a offline tool. You can run it without internet access. You don't need an SMS login ID to have access to it. We just need to send you a template file, and you can use it. Let's see. Is the intent for the whole PDT to input information, or is the intent of one person per project? That's a good question. I would leave that to the PDTs. It may be easier if I was doing it. I would just have one person putting in the information, but the PDTs, if they want to divide it up by discipline or what have you, that's fine, as long as everything gets into one bread file that becomes the document for turnover. Then that's fine. It's up to the PDTs. Is there any building information that cannot be changed after the initial creation of a new building? Like on LEED, you can't change the zip code. Oh, interesting. I don't think that there is. There are some things in the builder system that it imports. From the real estate database. The UICs and things like that, and that's a one-way ticket. Basically, they draw down the information, but no information gets pushed back up. So that information, if it's wrong in the real estate database, then the people on the real estate side would have to be the ones to change that bit of information. But as far as our checklist goes, there's nothing in here that can't be changed. Let's see. Also, is the intent that each facility will have multiple drafts of each checklist for each design construction phase, or will one checklist be created and then updated for each phase? Basically, each of the phases that we had, let me scroll back up here. If you remember the original 2013 ECB that launched the record card, it had requirements to submit the record card at each of these phases. We probably would like to see a builder checklist filled out at that point. You can bring up an old one and save it. I think that as long as we get the final one in the end, that's all that really matters as to whether you keep one going and update it each time, or whether or not you create new ones. I think there can be value added in having checklists be independently created at each phase. So I think that's something we can discuss during the beta testing process. If there's a need to go back and look at what was done before, or to just to keep it as a living document. Scroll here. Who or what organization is the help POC for the beta effort, and will you be sending that out? Basically, the help regarding the content of the checklist, Kelly Polzin and I myself are going to be talking and coordinating those kind of questions with you guys being the beta testers. If there's a problem with the programming or with something to do with the checklist physically, then Buddy Bartles through Cyril, who's our point of contact that works with the programmers there. So it might depend on what the beta effort is. But even if you need something from him, I just prefer that you go to me or Kelly. So that would be myself. And all the beta testers, of course, they will be given my contact information. My contact information is on the ECB that went out, the ECB 2017-1. That's on the whole building design guide. So I'll be your POC for that. John, what was done and with the previous checklists, and will anything be done with these new checklists? The previous checklists, we have a library on our network drive that has all the previous checklists that were submitted. There is a wide range of usability in a lot of those. There was some debate as to how the ESA compliance was to be calculated for energy and all that kind of thing. But I have used those for a lot of reports that I did, especially I was doing some reports that I need to bring up at the next DMR, comparing some of our past design project record cards with their actual performance from the metering data system. Those have been hit and miss. We're getting those religiously from some people, and other people I have to hunt them down for the record cards. So I think that this system is going to be a lot better and get more established when it's not based on people emailing spreadsheet files around. Let's see, when will the beta testing checklist be mandated for all federal agency projects? Will projects still require ENS scorecards? The checklist for the guiding principles, the one that the CEQ did, is already mandated for all federal agency projects. The checklist, basically, that CEQ did, we have adopted into UFC 1-200-02. I'll be creating basically the same exact thing in a spreadsheet form for those who need it if their project starts after the other UFC is obsolete. But basically, the record card is no longer relating to the current UFC, so new projects should be using a version of the new checklist. The prior record card will be replaced by this builder system, and so you will no longer need to be doing the ENS scorecards. In fact, if you read what the ECB says, that if you're ready to start using the system, you don't have to wait for the beta testing period to be over. If it works, you can just start using the new checklist on all your projects. It doesn't have to be just one. We just wanted one minimum. But yes, the spreadsheet ENS record card will be going away. Is there a way to print the full full score sheet so we can attach it to our DA throughout design? I have gone through and done screen captures. That's a good question. Now, that might be something we can bring up with the programmers to see if they can have something where we could print out a wholly expanded list instead of just scrolling up and down. But that might be something that we can bring up. Yeah. So anyway, got 4 minutes left. If there are any further questions, I know I ran through them kind of quick. If I didn't really give satisfactory answers to anybody, feel free to ask again. Again, at the top of the chat box is the links to downloads and to the other things that I mentioned earlier. There is a presentation. I believe you can download that somewhere on the screen. I don't really see the same thing that you guys are seeing because I'm in presentation mode. Apologize for that, but I believe there's somewhere in the top menu or something you can click things to download. I hope most people have gotten over this cold that's been going on in the country, or whatever you want to call it. So basically, this is the new score sheet, and not seeing any more questions. I guess I'll wrap it up. Again, I am recording this so that I will post it to the YouTube private channel on the sustainability website. We'll put a link on the Mercy site as well. I have a quiz on there if you guys want to try to get your excuse me, get your CEUs. You can answer the questions on the quiz once they're posted on the Mercy site. That should be done probably by the end of next week, and we will have that available to you. So if you answer the questions correctly, you can get your CEUs. Otherwise, I think the next steps I've been starting to get the people who have been designated their representatives, their beta testers for your various districts. Oh, could you resync the links? I believe I can't see when the logged in after the message was sent. Okay, I see. Yes, I can resend those links. Let me do that. Think. I'll cut and paste these again. Think. There they are. All right, let's see. Let's see the comparison between the estimated EUI and the actual EUI. Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, the accuracy of the energy models is a big concern. To recap, for people that aren't familiar with them, energy models are designed with a lot of assumptions. They're designed to help the designer of record select between different options. Like if you want to look at doing a geothermal mechanical system versus gas heat and air conditioner, what have you, the energy models will put on all the heat loss of your building to the walls and the roofs, and they'll run these calculations to say, okay, if you do the geothermal system, this is how much energy you'd use, and this is how much it would cost, and if you do another system, and basically it compares different systems, and so they are very valid in giving you an idea of which is the best system to use from energy efficiency on a life cycle basis. They don't necessarily match reality. However, logic would dictate that the closer they match reality would be the more valid that the choice would be. And so the question has been, okay, well, we say that, hey, you know, on these models, they're saying we're going to use X amount of BTUs per year. How does that compare with reality once we get the meter data in? And of course, the models are based on historical averages for yearly weather. Not every year is exactly averages to history. We've had an incredibly warm February, for example, here in DC. So there will be a lot of variation, but we're looking into figuring out, are we having any factors of these assumptions that really need to be adjusted a lot? How accurate are we? So basically that's the question. Let's see, there's John's correct. Yeah, sure, I can share my report when I get to that point. It's probably going to be in October. Need link for download of presentation. Okay. And I'll see if I can send out a link, or maybe I'll just see if I can send out the presentation to the attendees on the meeting invite. I'll see if I can send it by email. I thought there was a download button, but maybe there's not. All right, so we are at 3:01. I have a meeting at 3 o'clock, which has already started, so I'm going to have to sign off. Look for my email with the presentation if I can get it to fit. I'd have to PDF it if it doesn't fit in the megabytes. But thank you all for joining, and I hope that we do a good job with our beta testing. Oh, there's something I didn't mention. The beta testers will inform the instructions, and those of you that actually participate in writing the instructions, I do have some funding available for a labor code. If you want to help us actually produce the materials, that would be wonderful, and we can talk more about that later. Thank you all for joining.